Alright guys, I hate to say this, but it's time we had the talk. Yu-Gi-Oh! Needs a lot of help, and players are begging Konami to send much needed aid to their beloved card game. And honestly, these problems did not arise overnight. So rather, we're talking about the higher rarity bumped cards in our core sets leading to super expensive staples, or rather it's around the lack of communication regarding their ban list that they seem to be choosing time and time again to be putting money above balance. And while those issues, as well as a lot of others, are important and we will get into those, but those go second to the main issue that Konami needs to address that will keep players competing, and that is prize support. And now, while Yu-Gi-Oh! Is an older TCG, but has evolved many times through the years to adapt with the times, the prize support is very archaic. And now, while your local OTS probably offers way better prize support than they did when I was younger, we have to note that a lot of these OTS, ultis, and supers are not retaining value as much as the older super rares out of Champion Pack, Tournament Pack, or even the ultis from the Turbo Pack. And that's just the locals. When we take a look at the higher tier events for Yu-Gi-Oh! Versus games like Pokemon, One Piece, or even the newer Lorcana, that's when the gap becomes appalling. Once we're looking at the YCS cards like the Another Versus, even the ones that are just super rare because they're the ones that are on the market, we're seeing that the Dragons are about 500, the Glutonian is about 650, which is really not that good. And that's like, I know players will be like, well, what about the Ultras? They're not even on the market because people are having to sell them in cash so they don't lose half the value in fees. And even then, it's going to be like double. It probably will not be triple the value of the super rares. But a lot of the champions are probably realizing, I'm just going to hold this card unless I get a lot more value for it. And then we take a look over at the games such as Pokemon, where if you win Nationals, you're getting $10,000 in prizes just going to the first place player. And then the player who wins Worlds is getting $50,000 in prizes going just to them. So second, third, fourth, you guys are getting stuff too. And now I know that it's Pokemon, like the biggest game ever, as well as it's not all in straight cash prizes, but when you look at the newer games like One Piece and Lorcana, that's when Yu-Gi-Oh! Players start getting a little bit salty. And for good reason. Some of the older pre-releases like the Monkey D. Luffy Super Pre-Release Winter Edition is well over $1,000 and is looking like it could go up as the time goes on. Then even things like Lorcana, when you get into their Mickey Mouse series cards, they're literally well over $1,000. And then the golden ones get into the $10,000 range plus, okay? And this is just the beginning of their tale. And this is all a kick to the gut even more when you realize how much more we have to pay just to get into the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! But before we get into that, what are some things Konami could do to gain hype around the prizing? It is very important Konami handles the prizing a little bit more important as the years go on, because ban lists as well as rarities will flop once in a while, and that's okay. But without a steady prize system, the players just don't feel like it's worth it to play. And now, some of the most talked about options that players want to see for prize support are things like full arts, extended arts, hell, even some alt arts of the full meta cards like Ash Blossom, Triple Tactics Talent, Thrust, heck, half the cards in the extra deck like IP, SP. All those cards are easy choices for Konami to choose to give anything like a full art to. And if you make that the prize for your tournaments like YCS or any higher tier event, players are going to go and players are going to travel to get there. And honestly, players want this so much, you see a bunch of your content creators making their own versions of the border breaks and full arts on the X, on the Twitter, anything you're looking at. That's how much players want this to happen, okay? So it's literally like Konami, the players are almost doing it for you. Let's throw them a bone. But they really don't even have to stop there. We see Konami has the capability of making the platinum cards, silver cards, all these different materials. Heck, we could make some crystallized cards like Dark Magician Girl or the Black Luster Soldier. Stop trying to upsell us these silver Dark Magicians or whatever it is. Honestly, these cards and heck, the Kaiba briefcase should be given to the players that win major events. And again, for something like a Kaiba briefcase, players would travel to get there. And now, while things like crystal and silver cards and full art Ash Blossoms would definitely probably be for higher tier events like YCSs or Nationals, we do see that things like locals need some love too. So whether you're doing rarity bumps of cards or higher rarities like ultimate rares or collector rares for those events, or even a call number on the prizes. Have the card with the little digit of what number that one is out of how many, and those would actually be increasing the price right then and there for just a little change on a card. Or we could even go back to the good old days where we had event exclusives like a Crush Card Virus and Gold Sarcophagus. Okay, listen, I was kind of half kidding. But the value was there, okay? And if Konami really wants to harp that the prize card should not be playable, at least make it nostalgic. Things like Full Art Crystallized Blue Eyes White Dragon or Dark Magician Girl would gain so much traction. And again, this would get players all hyped up about it, whether they're competing, collecting, or just a fan of that type of archetype. They would definitely be entering for a chance to be getting their favorite type of card in these rarities. And now, unfortunately, with the released version of Another Verse Solaris, these changes will not at all be taking place until 2025, or unfortunately after, because as we know, it will take Konami a long time to be implementing a bunch of stuff. But there is good news because they have been doing all the surveys and a bunch of asking around, kind of giving hints that they know this is an issue. And again, the pricing issue is emphasized by the fact that, especially for TCG, there's such a high entry cost to be playing the game. And again, this is a Konami thing. Going into how they kind of scam us in the boxes, over in the OCG, a lot other staple cards are lower rarity, as well as there's a big rarity distribution difference from the TCG and OCG. So where they'll get cheaper Molcharmies and Dark Iron Dragons, here they're rarity bumped to secret rares, where you only get so many in a case, let alone one box, so you have to buy more product. And this leads to a lot of players having just a ton of bulk and useless commons, because a lot of the cards that would normally be commons and worthwhile collecting are no longer in that slot. And this is leading to players to having to buy more product just to obtain certain staples that would normally be common, as well as super rare. And this jacks the price up on the secondary market, making the entry point to compete fully for most players unobtainable. So not only do we get a box and then they rarity bump everything so we have to buy more of the product and pay more if you want the signature staples, but then they will actually resell us the rarity bump stuff later as reprints, thus tanking the initial prices of the original copies. And then those reprinted ones are normally in things now like Rarity Collection, where over in the OCG, those Rarity Collection luxury rares would normally be included in the box itself of the core set. But normally by the time Konami gets around to reprinting the way they want to, and then finally hitting those cards on the ban list, the decks are honestly a little power crept out of the way, and we see we're just killing the older stuff to make room for the newer archetypes that Konami are releasing, and then the players holding on to the older cards are losing value altogether and can't actually trade out of their decks into the newer archetypes. So not only are all the cards more expensive, but the way Konami does the ban lists is not giving us hope either. With these ban lists focused on a little bit more of the money side, we're seeing Konami is actually letting a lot of decks run a little bit more rampant instead of trimming them down right away like we see in the OCG. And that is because they have to sell a bunch of their core product like the Megatons at the end of the year. And this is honestly having a huge detrimental effect on the game. And if you don't believe me, ask Linkuriboh. And on top of that, Konami seems to seemingly enjoy keeping players in the dark around topics such as the ban list or TCG exclusive products or rarities. And if you're a content creator and you break that, you're banned. So whether it is the ban list issues or the high cost of the staples, players are burnt out on the excessive hamster wheeling that they feel Konami has them on. And while both of those issues need to be addressed, Konami definitely needs to do one thing, and that is better pricing. Because I think players would be surprised what they'd be willing to put up with if at the end of the road was a sweet, sweet bag. But Konami is trying to change their game before they have to implement a new Master Rule. And if you want to know what those Master Rules would be, check out our Master Rule 6 video. But until then, guys, stay safe, have a good night, and suck it, nerds.